The following is a Rocker Media production.
Only if one's original concern with meaning fulfillment is frustrated is one either intent on pleasure or content with power.
Carole King had a song, "My life has been a tapestry of rich and royal hue." My first memory is my father coming into the hospital room to fetch me and my mother. There's the challenges and the turmoil and all the things that happen that can provoke anxiety, can cause depression, can traumatize you. And then there's the reaching towards goals. I was at the second-hand bookstore, and there was this book, Man's Search for Meaning. And he says, "He who has a why can live with almost anyhow."
Today we are here talking to Pieter Jooste, retired lecturer and psychologist, about life's journey and a search for meaning. I came to know Pieter the first time about 29 years ago as a first-year psychology student at Tuks After 5, which was a study opportunity for professionals or young professionals to further their education. He immediately stood out to me as not only knowledgeable, but also an authentic person with character. And I was first introduced to much of the field I explore today by him. Two quirky but endearing features I recall is that he always stood outside greeting students as we came in after a busy day. And he also waited for us afterwards to greet us and say goodbye. He said goodbye with the memorable words, "Have a good journey," which always felt like it implied much more than a simple goodbye. A slightly more academic, but equally personalized phrase I remember and often use in my own teaching is, if you're trying to help someone, it can't be about you, which for me is the foundation of a profession like teaching or working in the field of psychology. So now that I introduced his character, let me introduce you to the person. Pieter, with those few comments, welcome to my podcast, and thank you for your willingness to come and share with us today and take part in the conversation.
Thank you so much, Anu, and thank you for the opportunity. This is a first for me. When I re-met Anu, I must also share this with you. He greeted me, but I had no idea who was speaking to me, because when he was a young student and I was teaching, it was way back. He called me Prof, and I never became a prof at Pretoria University, but it was nice to be called Professor. And then in the beginning, I guided Anu towards the quotes that he gave now, because there were many things that he learned from me that I never did, but he took a whole bundle of other things that people did that were good things. It was nice to me to know that I represented, let's say, within psychoanalytic theory, I represented a good object in Anu's life. So thank you very much for this. The theory that we are working on today is we're focusing on Viktor Frankl's logotherapy, meaning that you're searching for a meaning in life. And in personality theory, there's a theorist who coined the term psycho-biography. In the method that was taught to me by one of my professors and that I started using, you can use the biography to understand theory and the development of theory, or you can use the theory to understand the person. And when I did it with students, I worked between the two almost digital poles. When I started preparing in my mind for today, I thought maybe with a theory that goes around suffering as one part of the side of neurogenetics, which is a theory that will be explained just now. On the one side, there's the challenges and the turmoil and all the things that happen that can provoke anxiety, can cause depression, can traumatize you. can make life really, really bad. And then there's the reaching towards goals. But what I became more aware of in the last week is that there's an I, a me, in that turmoil. So it's about who are you within this that's happening to you, and how can you grow? How should you grow within the dynamics of being in that energy field, that vacuum of not there and facing the challenge, but always having goals. So my life started when I was born. I'm thinking of Charles Dickens in one of the books he says to start my life, to begin my life with the beginning of my life. I have no recollection of my life up until 5.5. I had head trauma. I was in an accident, and I was in a coma for a period of time. And I only have a recollection of a running memory. My first memory is my father coming into the hospital room to fetch me and my mother. And in his hand, he had a box, and in the box was a red Jaguar E-Type. And up to now, this is my favorite car. And then when I go through my life, I was in one primary school, one high school. Toward the end of my primary school career, I had a fracture of my left femur. My left leg is a little bit shorter. And in a way, that has always been part of my life. And many things that happened in my life would not have happened had that not had happened. And I'm not saying bad things. It's just things that happened. I went certain routes in my life because of certain things that happened. My academic career is I started off studying at Tuks. I became a pastor of religion in the Dutch Reformed Church, and I studied 7 years. I didn't do any psychology in my pre-grad years. So I learned philosophy. Incidentally, no one taught me Frankl. Frankl was in a course much later at UNISA, and there was one lecturer that gave us a day lecture on Viktor Frankl. She studied under him part of her career. But I taught myself Frankl by reading.
Sort of a natural interest, actually.
It appealed to me.
Yeah.
I remember that in my BA for theology, I was at the second-hand bookstore, and there was this book, copy cover, Man's Search for Meaning. And I bought the book, and what appealed to me is in the introduction, in the front page, he quotes Nietzsche, and he says, "He who has a why can live with almost anyhow." And hopefully in what we are talking about today, that would also come forward. The noogenic vacuum or process that Frankl talks about means that you have challenges. Let's just use one word for the suffering and all the other things, and you are there. But if you just live in that, you're going to go nowhere. So you have to have goals that you live for. And in that energy field and the pressure field of that, you keep on developing. And somehow it just clicked in me. Frankl is like something that meanders through my life. So briefly, theology, 7 years study, practice for 5 or 6 years. I was also a national service chaplain in W. Botha's War in 1984 and 85. I was a Air Force chaplain at Air Force Base Durban. I flew in helicopters. I even held the stick of an Impala for a moment. I flew in a 2-seater with a pilot, and he gave me the stick for about 10 minutes, so I was in control of an Impala. When we had Super Freelon helicopters on the base, they were huge helicopters. You could put a whole Nomad, which was a kind of 4x4 that South Africa developed, right into the aircraft. And often recce's also did free fall from that. But when the first time that I went into a chopper, into a Super Freelon, they said from now on, that pilot would never fly without me. So when he had the opportunity to fly, I was there. They said that if the sky pilot is in the kite won't fall. So the chaplain was a sky pilot. My first experience in that helicopter was in the summer of 1984. It was hot in Durban, and I was standing there in my half blues. That means the short sleeve blue shirt and the day dress, and everyone was laughing because they were wearing thick jackets and flight jackets. They said at 10,000 feet it's bitter cold, so they gave me a fly jacket, so I went up with that. But yeah, Carole King had a song, My Life Has Been a Tapestry of Rich and Royal Hue. But that's how my life has been. It's been a tapestry of things that happened to me. In those years as National Service Chaplain, I learned for the first time about death. I did a dissertation about loss in my theology dissertation.
Because obviously others who are now looking at you for comfort in that role.
Yeah, and the deaths that I encountered, a pilot who's in control of everything, a jet pilot, son got leukemia and he died in my first year of national service, and I had to console him.
Oh.
Also, my best one, well, in that setting, I was really good friends with the head of the Air Force Police, and he was in those days Rhodesian, so he worked in the he lived in the Rhodesian Bush War and became the Zimbabwean Rhodesian Bush War, and he became an alcoholic. He drank himself to death during my national service in 1985. He died, and then my mother died towards the end of my national service. So when I went in there, not really knowing where in theology and in human sciences I would find myself, but I came out and immediately became a bereavement and end-of-life counselor. End-of-life counseling in the sense that you work with the death and dying, the dying process and with death, and bereavement that you work with those that stay behind. In my congregation, I had my pastoral responsibilities and I was a hospital pastor as well. In the premises, there was the Pretoria West Hospital was part of where I worked. I worked with the elderly, I worked with the youth, I worked with everything in between. I christened children. That was a very deep experience when people make that commitment that they want to bring their children into a certain lifestyle, a certain belief, and you are the person that do the token of that. So I worked with all ages and all developmental stages.
I think I can really get a sense of this tapestry that you're talking about, and the richness of that, and the whole sort of all the unique aspects of all of that.
When I met my mentor, we would go and we would work at Groothoek Hospital and do psychological work there and be there for a few nights and a few days. And on the way there, I would tell my stories of my life. And he said to me, Pieter, you are a Highlander. You know the Highlander?
Yes.
He says there's too much life for one life.
Yeah.
I moved to psychology. It was an existential decision. I wanted to work in another field of understanding human nature. So I started again, 7 years of study, going through the process, and got selected to do masters in clinical psychology at Pretoria University. Did my internship at one military hospital. I had the opportunity to work simultaneously in you do 6 months of psychiatry and 6 months in the medical field. And in the psychiatry 6 months, I also worked at the hospice at one military because of my previous experience. In my 6 months in the medical side, I worked with upper limb rehabilitation. And from then on, I had worked holistically with multi-professional fields in the time that I worked at Pretoria West Hospital, and I just continued doing that. at One More, and I lectured for a while at Dix, and that's where you and I met. And then I went to work from 1992 until 2020. I worked at the South African Police Service at the medical board section, again working multi-professionally, holistically looking at human nature. When I look holistically at human nature and existence, because I'm also in my mind an existentialist and a phenomenologist. Existentialist in the sense of, and you must help me more with this, the definition. To me, it just means the fullness of human existence. And phenomenology, I look at the interrelatedness. I work with a model that's like a plus. Rollo May spoke of 3 of them. He said that you live in a Mietwelt with others, you live in an Eigenwelt with yourself, and Unwelt with your world, and then the term Uber was brought in. So that has been developing right through my life. Currently, that's also part of how I look at people that I work with.
So when one looks at challenges, trying to make sense, analyze, find meaning, then I think that framework of relationship with self, with others, with the world, and with a spiritual aspect is, it's almost also like you're defining a bit of a field there.
All the work that I've been doing since I've been working with the model, it's been working. I sometimes, when I do public speaking on the topic, I say it's like a spinning top. We all had that, and the way that how you threw it, and then you could put your hand on it and let it spin on your hand. Do you remember that?
Yep. I think you and I did.
Did you guys have a chance?
I'm
talking to the technical team. So a little bit of Newton, and people say I'm not understanding Newton exactly right when I'm saying it, but let me do one of the laws says that for every action there's a opposite and negative counter-reaction. So if the top is grounded well, with gravitation that's pulling it down, it's going to be grounded. And that opposite force is keeping it from falling down. So it's spinning like this. So that part are here. So this one is keeping it spinning from that side, and this one from the other side. Nevertheless, if any of, and here I'm right.
Well, I think the construct there would be balance.
Yeah, I'm talking about balance when I talk to when I guide, then they understand the balance part. If the one is getting too much attention, I'm too busy with myself, I'm going to fall that side.
No.
I'm too busy living in my religious world and doing my spiritual things.
Forget about what's around you.
Or I'm living in a bush, in a forest, and I have no contact with any other human people. It's not going to work.
Yeah.
If I'm too altruistic, too busy with other people, and not also looking after myself, so yeah, it works well.
So it's really a construct. The balance and health seems to always sort of the healthy thing is the balance thing. Seems to come to the fore in literature when you read it always, especially I think in Frankl as well.
If you don't move forward, so while the top is spinning, you have to be, and Frankl's theory helps you to move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, there's much there. It sounds like we can spend another podcast on more exploration, but I think that gives us a pretty good grounding of what we're going to talk about today. So definitely, I want us to take a look at the significant theorist today called Viktor Frankl, and I think he's one of the most prolific theorists to look at in our, we say modern world, but maybe it's postmodern now. If you look at what happens around us, if you look at the news, you look at people's behavior, it almost feels postmodern in the sense that pretty much what Frankl said about a search for meaning. So I think he's quite a relevant theorist to be exploring at this point in time, arguably always relevant, but for me he just really stands out as a theme that weaves throughout, like you said earlier. So I remember doing a talk on him when I was a teacher in training at the Teachers Training College, and I called him my favorite psychologist at that point. Um, little did I know how much at that point, how much there is actually to know about, and how much a lot of those themes would resurface over time. So what I see as his most fundamental assertion, Peter, is the idea that man's major drive is a search for meaning, right? He asserts that instead of pleasure or power, the most basic drive is a need for meaning. So I think that's what also his initial appeal for me was exactly that. He moves away from this almost purely behavioristic or materialistic into this man as a creature looking for meaning. Um, so I have a quote here from his book. I have his book here, The Will to Meaning, and the subscript of it is Finding Purpose in Life. Um, you know, very appropriate for our conversation here today, I thought. It's published in 1969. The quote says, in contrast to animals, a person is not told by drives and instincts what he or she must do. And in contrast to people in former times, are not necessarily told by traditions and values what should be done. People neither know what must be done nor what should be done. Being confused as to what they wish to do, people now want to do as others do, and this is called conformism. Or people do what other people wish them to do. This is called totalitarianism. He proceeds to explain that this means that, especially in modern times, people's will to meaning is frustrated, and that people tend to regress to more primitive forms of this search for meaning by becoming motivated by a will to power and even a will to pleasure. The way he explains this is only if one's original concern with meaning fulfillment is frustrated is one either intent on pleasure or content with power. Peter, I believe the title is significant. And I would like us to explore now what are some of your views and insights on these very significant core principles, we might call them, of human behavior that Frankl describes in his prolific way.
One of the things that came to mind while you were talking is that Frankl doesn't like isms. So he, one of the things that stood out is that in the search for meaning, he also talks about the will to meaning. Is that connecting to what you read there, is that we have our own free will.
Yes.
Yes. And it's not a pleasure principle or principle to power that takes us. It's the search for meaning. An anecdote, the textbook was pretty well researched. Apparently, at a very young age, just a year after finishing his school studies, he wrote a paper that was published in Freud's magazine. He was an Austrian, Freud was an Austrian, and Alfred Adler was an Austrian.
Yeah, I never realized that connection.
So, yeah.
Well, in Austria, but I didn't know they corresponded.
They were all three Viennese. He corresponded with both. He corresponded first with Freud, and Freud published the paper. Next year, he decided, no, the pleasure principle isn't working. So he went to Adler. Was that the power principle?
Yes.
So he published in Adler's magazine, journal, Adler's journal, and it went down well. So the next year, the Adlerians, Adler people, they kicked him out. And what does that say for the power principle? So they kicked him out, and he wrote on his own because his will to meaning wasn't fitting in with any of those models. In school, and I can't remember which ism it was, when he was 13, the lecturer said that we are a process of oxidation and combustion. that is what it means to be human. And he said, but what about meaning then?
Yeah.
And he became, at a very young age, he became an alpinist. So he started mountaineering in the Alps. And when you're an alpinist, means that you are very fit, you carry no extra body weight, you carry very little, only the most necessary things with you. And you are focused, you have got a goal, but you are busy with this process, and there's anxiety in it, there's trauma, you stumble or your foot, lose your foothold, and for that moment your life flashes in front of you, and then you go on, and you live in that tension field.
Wow.
So one of the concepts to connect in the middle, essential to Frankl's theory, is that we have a free mind.
Yeah.
That will to meaning. There's some of the people that criticize Frankl said that he's not exactly right in this freedom of will, and not really being a logotherapist. And as I put myself wide open, I had no real theoretical training except my own training, and I've had a lived experience working with the concepts of meaningfulness and will. I, in my own life, I would agree fully with him. I have my own free will. And you who are listening to me can resonate. We, in the end, have a will. Frankl said that if anything else, everything else is taken away, if all your choices of actions are taken away, then you can still philosophically, existentially, retain the right and the ability to decide what you're going to make of that. Even if it means that you're in a cell, and you're sitting in a cell, and you're in solitary confinement in one of the camps, and you're beaten regularly, and all your rights are taken away from you, and I'm talking Frankl now. Even if you are sent from one camp to another, and your family is sent to another camp, and you are keeping the reality of them alive with you, and they are gassed in that other camp that they are sent to. And even if you get that news, you still have that freedom to decide what you're going to make of it.
Yeah, because of course, he's well known for being detained in the concentration camps during the Second World War.
He decided in the 1940s, and Hitler's influence in Germany and Austria was long before the war already there. He decided
all through the 1930s.
The late 1930s, that he's not going to escape. His sister went to Australia, and he stayed behind. He stayed behind in Vienna because his parents were there, and his father was really getting old, and his father wasn't so strong anymore. So he stayed behind. He and his wife and his brother and his parents and some other family members were put in a ghetto concentration camp in Theresienstadt, the suburb of Vienna.
Okay.
His father died there, and not long after that, they were sent, all of them, the rest of those that were alive, were sent to Auschwitz. In Auschwitz, he had a very brief time, but his mother and his mother and his wife and his brother stayed behind. His wife died a short while later. After a short time in Auschwitz, he was sent to Dachau. And in Dachau, he was in a sub-camp where he did hard labor. There was no gas ovens there. Within the concept of the development of logotherapy, there were little things that happened. You in Auschwitz, and I think I should share this, going into Auschwitz means that everyone knew that they're going to let you take off all your clothes, first a heap of all your valuables. They would even take your golden teeth out, all of that on a heap. Then all your clothes. Then they give you a bar of soap into the showers. And everyone knew. When you turn on the tap open, the gas comes in,
Mm.
and then you die then. So in a moment, and I will connect to that just now, in a moment, he realizes, I'm in Auschwitz. I'm in the men's part. My father is already dead. I don't know where his brother was. So they say, take off all your belongings. He decides, I'm going to keep the manuscript of the dissertation that I'm writing on logotherapy. It later became the book, The Doctor and the Soul.
Doctor and the Soul.
Yeah.
That's such an interesting title as well.
Yeah. Because Noah comes from a Greek word that means spirit or soul. So in Noah Genesis. So in the one pocket is the manuscript. In the other is his pin as a alpine guide in his coat pockets. So they say, Frankl, take off your coat. He throws the coat down. All this lost meaning.
Yeah.
Whoops, naked, bar of soap, into the shower, turns the tap up and water comes out. So I'm not going to be gassed. Comes out and takes a shabby coat because they give you a coat, and he takes the shabby one. Inside in the pocket is a piece of paper that another Jew wrote the prayer that the Jews pray, and that his father always prayed. Hear Israel, your God is one God. You have to, I'll read the quote just now. But you have to serve him with all your heart and all your strength and all your mind, all your soul. And all of these things played a role. Later he came in a situation where he decided, what am I going to do with my life? What is this theory anything worth? Everyone is dying and these people, and I committed myself in my life, even as a young doctor working in Vienna. He worked with in a ward where he had to work with female suicide patients. I committed myself to helping people to find meaning at the threshold of death. So he gets this thought, I'm going to go on with it. And then far away, a light goes on at one of the farmhouses, and he realizes, but that's to him a sign. He remains devoted to his religion. Later on, he married again a year or two after he came out of the camp. His wife was a practicing Roman Catholic, and he was a practicing Jew. And he continued saying his prayers. He continued maintaining that connectedness.
Yeah.
And all of things there. To come back to what you're asking, the theory.
Yes.
The theory says, in essence, that we must always be busy searching through everything that's happening for the purpose of our lives, for the meaningfulness in our lives. Some say search for meaning. Some say a will to meaning. It's a process. It's more than a search. It's a will. It's a commitment to meaning. It's a search for meaning despite what's happening, within what's happening. It's not just the things that happen is forcing me there. Despite those things, if the challenges are not there, you cannot grow. Even if you reach the goals, homeostasis is not a permanent thing.
Yeah.
You have to keep the.
Because I'm immediately thinking, so what if you reach the goal now? What then?
It goes forward all the time, all the time. When I was a chaplain, I lived in Amanzimtoti, and there was a couple that were on holiday. This couple were body surfers, so they could do it. So they were where the body surfers are, where the surfers are, where you can't really reach the firm ground. And then on the right wave, on the right one, you swim into it and then you surf.
Yeah.
So they put their kid in the shallow water with the lower part of the umbrella into the ground, and he had this harness, and he was tied to that, so he's safe.
Okay.
So he's watching them. So when they turn their backs, he takes it out and he goes a little bit deeper and a little bit deeper. Always pushing the boundaries.
All right.
That thing of searching for meaning and pushing the boundaries, I think, is an essential part of being a fully functional human. And I think, I know that that's one of the things that Frankl said.
Yes, so also back to, I like what you said about Frankl as the mountaineer, the alpine guide, of climbing a mountain and then, you're using a rope or some device usually, and you're climbing, and so it's this field of tension. So maybe explain to us a little bit more about that neurogenic field of tension. I know you've illustrated a little bit, but maybe just elaborate a little bit more on that, because that's just quite a fascinating construct for me. This tension field, the push and the pull, or the almost being held back, in the physical metaphor by gravity, but you know, um, psychologically, what would some of those things be?
One of the things when I read Frankl the first time, I started reading Man's Search for Meaning, and then I read many of the other works. In Man's Search for Meaning, he says that suffering is like a gas cylinder. In that, if there's a little bit of gas, it fills a whole vacuum.
Mm.
If there's a lot, it fills, but there's more pressure, the more there is. So the closer you get to the release, the more pressure you feel. But opposite to what one might think now, that's nicer. It's in the theory, you are closer to that, so you're a little bit more excited. So in neurogenesis, it means that you have to be in that field, and the more close you come to reaching the goal, it's better for your growth. If it's far off, then you get anxiety, you become depressed, you have trauma responses. I don't know if that answers.
No, definitely. It's sort of, for me, it's almost like a field of meaning, because if we go back to this idea of having a goal, and you're reaching that goal, it's like that's the thing that pulls you forward.
Your goal is pulling you, and it's the I, the me in this situation. I'm pushing myself forward. I'm not within what you said at the very beginning, I'm not the victim of my circumstances in a sense. I have a choice in my so I am actively involved in this pressure, this pushing forward to reach the goal.
So it's also very much about human agency. And I think if you look at the other Viennese schools, although I might be doing it a disservice to explain it like this, but it's definitely an important aspect. The will to pleasure, for instance. It's almost like you deliver to this will to pleasure. Pleasure is going to rule you. Same with power. You're going to want power, and then you want it but it's almost like the power ends up ruling you. In Frankl, he turns that on its head a little bit by saying no, but it's actually your agency, your freedom of will that fundamentally makes possible a will to meaning. Because but without negating circumstance. He's not saying the challenges don't exist. He very much acknowledges that, which for me grounds it and doesn't make it sort of a airy-fairy nice idea, but we all wish it was true. Because actually it is very true, because he from his own lived experience share these ideas, but very much the camps is a bit of a metaphor for what life can be like sometimes, isn't it? We're hamstrung. There are limitations that we have to recognize.
And the logotherapists that are watching this can correct. I think within being respectful to the theory that is living in, there's an intrinsic pleasure in doing these growth things. There's also something powerful, this power of decision and firmness of that I'm going to stick to whatever happens to attaining my goals. There's a certain power over yourself and over your circumstances that is bigger than the power principle.
So it's not really trying to contradict any of the other sort of theories. It actually subsumes it in a way.
I think he just moved on and realized it's existentially there's a much wider field to live in, and he was at that stage when he was being published in Freud's journal and in the Adlerian journal. Nazism was already there, and anti-Semitism. So he was aware of that there might be something coming. He made a decision not
So, like
to
many
flee.
theories, it's properly viewed within its historical context,
Yeah.
actually.
Yes, and that played a role in the psychobiographical method. What happens in your world is always part of your development. So I think part of him knew that staying behind in Vienna and deciding to look after my father will have consequences. That it will have a dollop of great suffering. But how great it was, he did not know then.
Yeah.
But while he was there, the conviction that he knew, I will get through this, and I will stand on a podium, and I will be busy teaching people about how it is to be an existentialist in a death camp, how it is to find meaning in the most dismal circumstances.
I think now that we have explored the most fundamental ideas of Frankl, let's discuss some of its applications as it's based in your experience. But to start us off with that, I would just like to share a little short story of my own. I used to work for a headmaster. This must have been about now 10 years ago. And he was quite famous for always when there was a new role advertised in the school and people would take up sort of a new position, that he would either start or finish the conversation with the words, and remember, it's always just for a season. So this seemed quite odd to me at the time. I was much younger. But I think I've since then developed an appreciation for this idea of the seasonality of life, and the idea that it's always just for a season, and also the implication, this idea that there's always another season, always another season coming. So I know that you have some of your own ideas around the significance of this, and if you wouldn't mind just sharing some of your ideas around this main construct of the seasonality of life, these different seasons that we go through.
Thank you. While you were talking now, I was thinking, I'm moving into, I think, my 67th summer of my life. That's not many, but it's quite a lot. Everyone has an awareness of seasons. People almost can feel it. But if you look back on your life, you had been to the seaside with your parents maybe 12 times during a period of say 15 years. So, and next time you're going again, and then suddenly there's a time when they go on their own and you go your own way, and your summers have different meanings. So there is a certain awareness of that season is bound to certain things. Rod McEwen, whose work I really like, he wrote very good music but very good poetry, and he followed the sun. He was a Californian, but he made enough money, he budgeted enough money that he could go after the sun. He didn't like winter, so it was a lifelong summer. But there is a way that humans have to tie certain developmental phases to seasons, and I think that's not entirely true. So I didn't really ponder on it earlier in my life. After retirement, when I started really working and focusing more on senior adulthood, I realized that it's not correct to say that being old means that you're in the winter of your life.
Yeah, that's a conventional sort of association.
And then stigmatizing it as that you have stopped growing, and that you have nothing to look forward to, that you live in misery. Tux had a newspaper, and then there was one day, there were quotes of why did the chicken cross the road? And because I really love the work of Ernest Hemingway, someone brought me that Friday and specifically showed it to me. The Hemingway quote of why did the chicken cross the road was to die in the rain.
That's terrible.
So it's almost as if people think that that's what old age means.
Yeah.
But senior adulthood, I work developmentally, often in Erik Erikson's theory of lifelong development, which means that you develop from birth until the end of your life. And amongst other things, when you get to adulthood, you get young adulthood, middle adulthood, and senior adulthood. Now again, maybe I'm not entirely correctly quoting Erikson, but senior adulthood is, say, from 65 on until the end of your life. And in your developmental stages, there are certain things that happen to you, and there are certain tasks that you have to make part of yourself, but you always fall back on previous tasks and previous outcomes that you received from your developmental process. So in senior adulthood, which starts from 65 until the end of your life, you are falling back on things that you learned earlier in your life, and you are learning new things in that time, and you're incorporating that as well. But it's always it's like a ballet. It's like a tango. It can be like a slow dance. I use the metaphor of a dance. Sometimes you move in and you are dramatically looking at building friendships while you're in a new retirement home that you have to live in. And then sometimes you are sitting back and thinking, what integrity have these people? Why are they so bullying, so controlling? So you move through things. And I brought that into my perspective of looking at the humans, the people that I work with. But I still interact. My older sister has got 3 daughters, and my younger sister has got 2. And all of them are around about 2 years apart, and they are all above 30 years old now. But I knew all of them since birth, and I've been part of their lives right through. 2 of them are my goddaughters, and they are like my own children. And their children, some of them are close to me and some not. But my younger goddaughter's children are at the very early stages of primary school, and they are like my own grandchildren. And I learn from them; they learn from me. So
once again, you're a close witness to the seasonality as they grow up.
If you would call that, they in the springtime, they in the pre-springtime of their life. To me, there can be times when they are sad, when they have experienced some kind of loss or some kind of disappointment, getting back to Frankl's theory.
Yes.
So they are even learning about how it is to adjust to what we would then say the wintry side of life. But for some people, some parts of their life are winter. But it doesn't necessarily mean that only old age are winter. Winter could be a metaphor of the difficult parts of your life. Freudian dream analysis means that you don't use the Jungian type of general symbols, but every person has got their own interpretation of the content of dreams. And I was doing dream analysis with someone, and she's a scuba diver, and one day she told me that she had a dream where she was underwater and was so deep down that she couldn't really see the light. And there were sharks swimming all around her. And then a manta ray, there was a shadow over her, and she looked up and a manta ray was swimming over her head. And I said, but that must have been terrible. No, that was the best dream I've ever had, because I felt so safe and so contained. And so winter can have different meanings to different people. When senior adulthood implies that you have stopped growing, then I find that that's my challenge. to build a relationship with that person and to help that person to understand. But there's still meaning and there's still growth. There's still that possible. So moving back to Viktor Frankl, one of the things that made life so meaningful to him was that he could do service to others. And he worked in suicide from the beginning of his professional career as a doctor. But in the camps, and I'm not sure where I am regarding that, because in my own existentialism, I would respect people who come to the end of their lives and who feel that it's their time to go. I wouldn't disencourage them in my discussion with them, but I would try to find out if all the possibilities had first been looked at. If there's not still some areas to grow, if that despair is so deep and so total, then I would respect it. But Frankl was at that place, he couldn't be there. So Frankl would always be busy. When people were suicidal in the camps, he would go and talk to them. So you would talk to them about finding meaning and projecting yourself forward to, a war is a temporal thing. There's a possibility that this war would end, the Second World War. There's a possibility that you would come out.
One wouldn't necessarily feel like that or see it that easily if all the conditions around you is not pointing towards that. And I think there is a little bit from his book that I do remember where he says that, the information that went into the camp was, for the most part, highly regulated. News from the outside world was at a premium, and often it also sounded like there was quite a bit of rumor mongering, and so the people that ran the camp made it feel like there's no possibility, when in fact there was a very, very strong possibility for them to be freed. And I think, and so Frankl, in those conditions, I can perfectly see other people in the camp looking at him going, look at this crazy one. He thinks this is going to end. But in fact, he was the realist.
And I think part of the narrative of running a concentration camp would be that you demolish all hope, because hope would make you much less governable, much less controlled. And then Frankl, who went through the will to power to move to the will to meaning, would understand how this doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
So he was not the kind of person that you did want in that camp. Right then, in Germany and in Poland, the concentration camps were running. But in Germany, at that very same time, they were prisoner of war camps. Now, in the prisoner of war camps, you primarily had RAF pilots, Royal Air Force pilots, that were shot down in the bombarding of Germany. The land soldiers, the army, were not part of that part of the war yet. It's only after the invasion in Normandy that they went back into Western Europe. So in the RAF camps, it was a whole different shade. It was the same Germans that were running, but the RAF people were totally uncontrollable. If you came into an RAF camp, there was a command structure where the highest ranking British officer was honored by everyone in the camp as the highest ranking officer. And that officer would go to the camp commandant and say, Commandant, I'm Colonel so-and-so, my people will have this and this. They will have their Red Cross parcels. Your guys will not open them and take out the chocolates and the cookies. We will have our Red. And when you came into a camp, you would maybe join the Shakespeare Society. So you would people would make dresses for the men that were tenors, so that they could in operettas do, in Gilbert and Sullivan operettas do. So they were doing a whole cultural thing. There were people reading, they were having talks, they had tobacco, they could smoke pipe, they had chocolates in a box. You could get fruit cake over Christmas, and you get Cadbury chocolates. There was an escape committee that was part of every prisoners of war camp.
One can imagine.
So when you came in and you were that kind of person, you immediately said, I want to join the escape committee. And in any given time in a POW camp, there were at least 2 tunnels, 1 or 2 tunnel projects going on. At the same time, hope was taken away so effectively from those that were living in the concentration camps. Right at that time, while Hitler and Mussolini were doing their stuff, there was a person that was part of the Allied structure, Joseph Stalin. And he was building his theory that right after the war, he started sending people to prison camps and taking their hope away. It can happen that people would move into senior adulthood and they would, in things that are happening to them, feel that I have moved into this very end of life season and call it winter and lose all hope. I think it's Dante that said in the Inferno that there was a sign that said, "You enter here must abandon all hope." That winter shouldn't necessarily be coined as a winter. That should still be a time of growth.
What I do remember about Erikson that struck me and stuck by me is this idea of basic trust of the baby. That you know, the way that the baby gets treated when they're young by the primary caretaker, which is mostly the mother, or often, then he builds this relationship, this object relation with the mother, and then develops basic trust. But for me, what I also hear in that, and I might be wrong, this is my interpretation, but I hear also in there is sort of the birth of hope. Now, it's also interesting in Erikson that he then all the other ego strings build on that going forward. And then one could argue through this lens, you know, why wouldn't that basic trust, hope, not also then form the firm foundation for the end of life sort of phases and thinking? It certainly must still be there and must still be as important as ever.
I'm going to use one example to directly connect to this, and but I'm highly impressed with the process that this person is going through, and I'm walking beside her while she's going through this process.
Yeah,
she lived in a flat in a seaside community, and then she had an incident which made it necessary for her that she had to move to a care facility where she's restricted most of the time to a room.
Yeah.
But she brought things in place on her own accord. She made sure that she has got very good connectedness to the internet, and that she's working on projects that she had been involved with earlier in her life and not too long ago, that's involved with language and language development and developing her own skills in that better. So her sense of purpose, that's one of the things that we work with more in senior adulthood when we look at the search for meaning. That sense of that you are still valuable, that you still have a purpose in life. In senior adulthood, that's part of the search for meaning.
Yes.
Is that I'm not only searching for this existential meaning, but am I valuable to other people? Am I valuable to the people in my world?
But that also, again, takes me back to, and I think you accredited Rollo May earlier with it, the idea of this field of, you know, relationship with self, relationship with others.
Yeah.
And we ended up talking about the importance of balance there.
Yeah.
And so this is still, all of that doesn't fall away.
No, it doesn't.
It's still in existence. Neogenic meaning field is still very much there and needs to be kept in balance.
And connecting with what you said just now, of there are things that you learn early in life when we were looking at Erikson,
yes,
that remain part of your life. And the better you learned it earlier, the better you do it. Now, this person has got a daughter who lives in New Zealand.
Yeah.
And their relationship is of such a kind that the daughter, I think there's currently about 11 hours between us and New Zealand. So at the end of the daughter's day, she daily, she WhatsApp calls her mother, and they talk for an hour. And so many people in senior adulthood do not have that connectedness.
Yeah.
So they can feel that they are in a stagnation, in a period of stagnation, in a time of despair, in a time of decay, in a time when you only live for the day that you're going to die. But living in a room with your connectedness to the internet, with your projects and your skills that you want to develop and pursue, and your connectedness with important others, all of those things make life extremely meaningful. And then it's not like being in a winter of stagnation and decay.
And you're almost pointing, I mean, I almost unwillingly go there now because I can be a big critic of the modern world and the electronic connectedness, and it's almost too much at one point. And I'm sure one can level a lot of warranted criticism towards it. However, it also seems in your example here, it's a very good, it's a part of modern life where this now is on a material level is facilitated by the electronics involved, but also her willingness to learn how to use it of the lady in question. But then also the human element that she does still have that relationship with her daughter in this particular case. And all those things kind of need to be kept in place for this balance to stay in a healthy place.
And this place and this time of her life then becomes a stepping stone, almost like a trampoline to jump on, for the rest of her life. Because there's going to be a life after this. There are things that are going to happen, and she's moving towards those things, and life will go on. Leonard Cohen wrote in one of his earlier albums, there was a song that the words went, "I choose the rooms that I live in with care. There's only one bed, and there's only one." And then with Vincent van Gogh in the back of mind, you hear, "I choose the rooms that I live in with care. There's only one bed and there's only one chair." You want to hear that. But Cohen says, "I choose the rooms that I live in with care. There's only one bed and there's only one prayer." And in the phenomenology of Cohen's prayer, because there's a freedom of interpretation if a poem has been written, to me in that lies the whole phenomenological existential world of my prayer while I'm living in a room is that I will live my life as fullest. I will explore every part that I can. When Frankl lost his coat and he found the new coat, that meant to him that his whole life would stay within his values. The stepping stone of the script that he wrote that was now challenged because it was lost, he wrote it again, and he did get it published.
And if you think of the title, The Doctor and the Soul, it could be construed as maybe a bit of a, there's possibly intellectually a bit of a paradox that one could read into it, sort of a material versus a spiritual. But the fact that he put those two together purposefully is also quite telling to me.
I almost always see them in that part of winter when the snow is melting and is mushy and you have to go out and you have to walk in the scald. Frankl did, for a fact, say that he walked as fast as possible to get to the front and get the best tools, the best shovel, so that he could do the work as effective as possible. It was an alpinist theme of his life, the preservation of energy, is that you got the best instrument to do the work as effectively so that you could find times that you could preserve your energy and rest, and that he took back to his service for others.
Yes.
So when with that energy he went back to camp, he says not far from that in the book, in the first book, The Man's Search for Meaning, he says that there were some of those that were doctors that understood physiology, that knew there was some of the inmates that could benefit from more food. So they would save their food and give it to them. And they would also know that there were some that wouldn't benefit and were inevitably going to die. So they would not give them extra food. And it was a harsh reality.
Oh.
But Frankl lived within his principles of life, respect for other human beings, respect for himself, and his respect for God, the way he perceived God and the impact that God had. So with these clients that I'm working with that are living in growth potential, creativity, finding purpose in meaningless tasks, Frankl in the camp when he went to Dachau, he was sent to a labor camp. There were no ovens, so he knew he wasn't going to be gassed, but he worked very, very hard for 5 months. Then someone came to him and said, but we can arrange for you to be moved to another sub-camp of Dachau, where you would be able to work as a doctor.
Yeah.
And really have your professional impact on people's lives. And he thought maybe there's a catch. Maybe they want to actually send me to the gas camp. But he took that. He said, but if I could be of more benefit for other people, I'm going to take that chance. So he did that. So you would find in retirement or assisted living communities that there are some people that have got more strengths, that would do things for other people that have less strength. You would find people who would come and visit, share things with you. Some of my clients work with poetry, some work with music, some work with other creative things, and they share it with each other so that they have an impact on other people's lives as well, within the very essence of how they exist then. So then winter, summer, autumn, spring are seasons. But it's not that they are filled with despair because of a phase of their lives.
Yeah, I think, and that's also why our previous conversations around this led me to this interesting saying by this principal that I worked with, that it's always another season. so that it shows to this cyclical nature of it, that even if we in the so-called last seasons of our lives, even in there's always a new season in there as well. And and as you rightly say, until possibly it winds down and the physical constraints become too much. So that's the end of life work that you do. But even in there would be purpose.
I've been working in bereavement and end of life guidance for more than 40 years. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who was the theory that I started working within and still work in, said that there's not only the 5 stages: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance, dabda, but there's also a 6th phase: introspection and isolation. When you have come to the place where you have really made peace with that it is the end of your life, then in my guidance I would try to facilitate that you have that time where you have introspection, where you are only busy with your memories, your life. You solve things with certain people that you still want to work through. I facilitate that you get in touch with them. And you are busy with God as you perceive God. And it's like autumn I haven't been in the UK, but in the poem Ode to Autumn, season of mist and mellow fruitfulness.
Yeah, I think many of us did that one at school. Ode to Autumn, I
and
remember.
N.P. van Wyk Louw, the Afrikaans poet that wrote full praise poems of seasons in the Boerland, where he also talks, die jaar word ryp in goue akkerblare en wingerd word wat verbrein. The year ripens in golden vineyard leaves. It's almost if that part of your life is not in the sign of decay, it's like this glorious time of a preparation of new growth. When this season thing came to me, it was spring, and on my way to the coffee shop where you and I re-met, I saw that the white stinkwood leaves were showing, because one day there's nothing, and then there's something, and next week it's full of leaves.
Yeah, and we're in spring now, we can see it in nature.
Yeah, the clivias were flowering, everything was blooming, and I realized, but winter is not death. Winter is preparation for growth. In the middle of October last year, a client came to me who lived in Germany, and he was in a hospital bed in Germany, an Afrikaans person with an academic background. And as we worked together, we spoke twice a week from middle October to middle December when he passed on. So I had 8 weeks with him and around about 16 sessions where we spoke. He was in his hospital bed, I was in my... So he was in late autumn, winter in Germany, and I was in summertime, summertime in South Africa, in Pretoria. We did talk about, he told me how when the snow started falling, how beautiful it looked out through his window from his hospital bed, how the trees looked darker and leafless, and the white snow. And I had a picture vividly of how it looked, and it was summer in my part of the world. Then we moved to springtime, to the forest close to where he lived. He was walking in the forest with me. He was cycling in the forest. We went to his workshop at his house where he was doing woodwork, and we were smelling the wood. We were moving through seasons of life, through a myriad of experiences that we experience with our senses. But we did a very thorough Bible study regarding things that were important to him, because he knew the science of the deeper study of the Bible. So we did that. We also lived within the masses and the choral works of the big composers. So I was vividly aware that we were in different parts of the world and two opposing seasons. But we were really in a process of growth. And we were scheduled to have our last talk, and he had a stroke, and he died. But it was for him just a stepping stone through to the next level of life. And one of the things that I have learned when I work with people with chronic illness, and often in senior adulthood, you get many people that break their hips, that have fractures of the hips or fractures, and then they have to wait for an operation because of heart conditions and a lot of things. So they're in pain. And with him I learned, which I knew when I was working 40 years ago in a hospital, that you can position yourself. I've got a lower back that would make me do this sometimes and what I'm doing is I'm shifting the position of my lower back. My lumbar spine to the right becomes a little bit uncomfortable. But when I'm sitting like this, immediately relaxes. And if I sit in this position for a few minutes, my whole memory of the pain is gone, and I only have a memory, an active memory of the relief, working with the physical side of psychology, of a physical experience. I did my internship at one military
Yeah,
hospital.
you were clinically trained originally. Yeah.
Yeah, so I worked for 6 months in upper limb rehabilitation and 6 months in psychiatry and in hospice. So what my clients learn then is they come back to me and say, now I have a vivid memory experience in my recent time of how it is to not have pain.
Yeah.
So when pain comes, I can remember, but only yesterday did I not have pain. Bringing it back to the season, bringing it back to Frankl. Frankl's theory, to me, as I learned to understand it, doesn't mean that you're going to be in equilibrium all the time. And equilibrium isn't maybe the golden trophy.
Yeah.
But those little experiences of joy, they make the whole thing worthwhile.
Yeah.
So, okay, my struggle friends will like this. Aluta continua. The struggle continues. So my clients, to the very end, if it works out the way my clients and I want it to work out, well, to the very end, still have experiences of joy and of life and of growth and of newness. So winter is beautiful. To me, winter is wonderfully beautiful, but it's not a season of stagnation.
Oh. So, Pieter, thank you so much for that and sharing all your experience with us, first of all. We spoke about the rich tapestry of your life. I think throughout this whole conversation, you gave us a little sneak peek of that tapestry. So maybe just in closing, as a last little bit, if I may be so bold, reflecting on your career as a counselor and a therapist, what impressions, ideas, or experiences stand out for you the most? What advice would you give to people, especially maybe those in the helping professions, like psychologists or counselors or teachers or educational practitioners in the field? You know, what sort of advice can you give to us through the frame of this rich tapestry we've been discussing?
When you are in a process with someone, when the process starts and you start to interact and start to get to know that person, when you get to the place where you start understanding what is happening to that person. We are theory bound, or we can be theory bound. If you had been an undergrad lecturer for a brief period of time, as I had, and you had to teach theory and touch upon theories, there's always the danger that a theory would become so almighty and become a paradigm of where everyone must fit in. So I'm careful, and I don't like the word eclectic. I've learned theory, and I learned to love parts of psychology, and maybe the part that I would really have liked to know better, and if I could have one area that I could practice in for the rest of my life, it could be the interpersonal psychology of Harry Stack Sullivan. And van den Berg that wrote such wonderful comments on that. Because in that, you learn that there's only one way to, I say it carefully, to start to try to understand, is that I must understand that your experience is your experience. So when in my therapeutic work, I get to the place where I realize that I am beginning to understand what it is that is happening to you, and trying to find a way that I could, on my journey with you, be of help to you. Moving into this part of my life, I'm not doing psychotherapy proper as per definition. So there's certain restrictions that would be part of psychotherapy where there would be more empathy and more expressed empathy from me as the guider or as a therapist. I've found the freedom that I can express empathy, but with great care and great respect. Because sometimes when I'm working with someone that's bedridden and that's living in pain and finding a way to sometimes experience non-pain and feel abandoned, feel restricted by the world that they are in. Sometimes they do need that, just that little bit of empathy. Like we had when we were children and we were ill, and our mother would hold us. Some people would say they have memories that they said to their mother when they had flu that my hare is here, my hair are sore, and that you would almost expect your mother to feel what you are feeling. So in this part of my life, to be able to help people to understand that they are respected, fully functional, still growing, optimally functional, still growing individuals that have a right to feelings and to emotions, and to be there and to maybe reflect those and to mirror it and to facilitate a process where they can have the proper interpersonal connectedness in their lives with the meaningful people in their lives to live their life to the fullest. That's to me very thoughtful. And maybe over the long run, that has been part of what really made me be a human scientist.
Pieter, there's no better place to leave this, just from my side, and I'm sure from our viewer side as well. Thank you so much for sharing all of this. And how shall I end this as a last phrase? Good luck with your journey.
And yours.
Thank you.